Hi, hello. Nice to meet you. What's your name?
Erin.
Erin. Nice to meet you, Erin. Do you know what Erin means?
Ireland.
Ireland. Who gave you that name?
My parents.
Your parents. Well, it's a beautiful name. Hello, miss. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
What's your name?
My name is Lucy.
Lucy. Do you know what Lucy means?
No.
Who gave you the name Lucy?
My mother.
Your mother. Well, thank you. Hello, my name is Tulay Akoglu, and I'm named after a murder victim. My cousin Tulay was pushed in front of a moving train by her husband. Although I wasn't there, I still feel deeply connected to her story. I can imagine the scene playing in my mind, both slow motion and backwards. I imagine that Tulay begged her husband to be merciful, to think about the family they had built together. Tears streamed down the corners of Tulay's eyes as she screamed, trying to catch the attention of the dispersing crowd. She tried to fight back, her skinny arms pushing against the chest of her husband. Her attempts were useless, though, and her body crashed onto the train tracks. The sounds of her bones could be heard over the sound of the loud train engine. Her organs spilled onto the ground, and in the end, Tulay's husband lifted her body off the tracks and put it somewhere safe. The story of Tulay's death is tragic. To add insult to injury, he was never convicted. Her murder was deemed a suicide. This was done by the judge and her husband sneaking into the morgue and slitting Tulay's throat. In Turkey, corruption runs rampant, and it is no coincidence that the judge was Tulay's husband's uncle. He's still a part of my family, in fact. We have met multiple times. I met him last spring in my uncle's home. Although the story of Tulay's death was tragic, her life was not unique. She was a victim of spousal abuse. Sadly, her life was just viewed as a statistic. In Turkey, at least half of all women are victims of domestic violence. Her suffering was viewed as necessary to maintain the order of Turkey, the social order of my family, more importantly. Together, we're going to dive into this excuse of culture to protect this pervasive violence of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is never okay, yet in 29 countries, at least 1/3 or more of men believe it is justified for a man to beat his wife. More surprisingly, in 19 countries, 1/3 or more of women say it is sometimes okay for a man to beat his wife. In some countries, domestic violence is so ingrained into the culture that vast majorities of women find it acceptable. In Rwanda, for example, 96% of women believe that it is okay for a man to beat his wife. And even in countries where vast majorities of women do not find it acceptable, the amount that find it potentially agreeable is not exactly tiny. It is about 1 in 10 in the United States and 1 in 5 in Germany, according to the World Values Survey. Domestic abuse are 2 words that scare us. Oftentimes, Americans stay blind to the issue. We believe it is a foreign problem or something that doesn't happen where we live. We believe because we have condemned it that we are immune to it. We have deemed it un-American and that a true patriot treats his family and wife with respect. Sadly, just because we stand by a cultural view of protecting families does not mean that abuse is eradicated. Just as we should not accept abuse due to cultural values, a society that deems itself above the violence perpetuates it by ignoring it almost outright. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are victims of intimate partner violence. During the course of 1 year, this equates to over 10 million American men and women. The number of troops that died in Afghanistan and Iraq is over 6,600, while the number of women who died in the same time period is over 11,000. That doesn't sound like domestic violence is no longer a part of culture in the United States. We excuse bad behavior by assuming that people do not know any better or that we have no right in commenting on another culture's values. Generally, I do agree that we must allow people of certain ethnic, national, and racial identities to express their values freely, but once those values are harmful, we must step in. When a mother is being beat mercilessly without question, we must step in. It is up to us, not as righteous beings, but as human beings, to help those who are shackled by the bonds of their cultural values as well as those at home. It requires more than just feeling pity to end this destructive cycle. Domestic violence is a pervasive cycle. When a boy grows up in a home where domestic violence is present, he is 3 to 4 times more likely to become an abuser himself. Tulay's husband lived in a family where he was hit both left and right. He was raised with fear, and as a result, he believed it was acceptable. He saw the power his father had over him, and he envied it. Soon enough, Tulay's husband was a father and a husband himself, and he could wield the same power that his father had over him. Everybody knew that he was hitting his wife and children, but they didn't care. It wasn't until that Tulay died that anyone even tried to pay attention, and even then, no one was willing to address the root cause of her death, the family's almost encouraging attitude towards domestic violence. Ending domestic violence will be a hard task, and is a task that in all honesty may never end. According to the Center of Disease Control, in the United States, the number of women who report intimate partner violence is 1 in 4, and the number of men is 1 in 7. In this room of about 100, according to statistics, there is between 14 and 25 victims of intimate partner violence in the room. Allow that to sink in. That doesn't even include anyone who has faced violence from a parent or guardian in their lifetimes. No matter what culture you're in, what setting you're in, what ethnic, national, or racial identity you belong to, or what time period you are living in, you will always find a victim of domestic violence, no matter where you are. Wherever you are, you'll always see someone who has felt the wrath of domestic violence. If I haven't proven to you that domestic violence is not exclusive to a few minorities, then I have not done my job. I'm committed to making sure that no one has to live a life of fear or violence due to someone who deems themselves a loved one. How ironic is that? Someone who calls themselves a loved one can be so hateful, so violent toward the people they're supposed to protect. We hold ourselves hostage when we allow and perpetrate violence within our own homes. Ending this deadly and destructive cycle requires us to notice the walls that we have built to defend it. Using culture as an excuse may be the thickest wall of them all. Look into the mirror, take a step back, and see how you have been protecting domestic violence, intentionally or not. Thank you.